Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to this extraordinary meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. For the benefit of those watching on our YouTube channel, members of the committee are present in the chamber, and these members will be voting on proposals this evening. Other members of the council who are also present in the chamber or participating via MS Teams can take part in any discussion, ask questions, but cannot vote. Your attention is drawn to agenda item 1, which sets out the guidance on how meetings will be conducted. Before we start with the formal business, we will confirm attendance of voting members and officers by doing a roll call. Over to Sally. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. When I call your name, please can you confirm that you are present? Councillor Oakley?
Present.
We have received apologies from Councillor Kenner, who's been substituted by Councillor Rhodes.
Present.
Okay. Councillor Afwell?
Present.
We have received apologies from Councillor Bishop and apologies from Councillor Brown, who's been substituted by Councillor Bell.
I'm here.
Thank you. And Councillor Cope?
Present.
Councillor Davies?
Present.
Councillor Harman?
Present.
Councillor Hickmott?
Yes, good evening.
Councillor Hood?
Present.
Councillor Hoskins?
I'm here too.
Councillor Hudson?
Present.
Councillor King?
Present.
Councillor Palmer?
Present.
Councillor Thornywell?
Present.
We have received an apology from Councillor Tunstall, who's been substituted by Councillor Mehmet.
Yeah.
Councillor Williams?
Present.
I can confirm we have 16 voting members of the committee present. I'll continue with introducing the officers. Yeah. So I will now introduce the officers. If we start with those in the chamber, so we have Jill Fox. If you can please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, Jill Fox, Policy Scrutiny and Communities Manager.
Yeah. I'm Sally Wang, Democratic Services Officer. I will now move on to those officers online. Eleanor Hoyle.
Good evening, everybody. Eleanor Hoyle. I'm the, excuse me, I'm the Director of Planning, Housing and Environmental Health.
James.
Hello, good evening, members. I'm James Bailey and I'm Head of Planning. Thank you.
Kelly.
Yes, good evening, members. Kelly Sharp, the Planning Policy Manager.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Item 2 is apologies, we've done those. Notification of substitute members, item 3. Yes, I think we've covered that. Item 4, declarations of interest. Probably not relevant, but okay, there are none. Minutes, there are no minutes to sign. So we'll move on to item 5. And Jill will introduce this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So we're here to discuss the call-in of the decision taken by the Cabinet Member for Planning with regards to the response to the proposed reforms to the National Planning Policy Framework and other changes to the planning system consultation. The decision taken is attached to Annex 2. And the reason for the decision outlined is in 1.1.2. In accordance with our committee procedure rules, the call-in for this decision was made by 5 members, Councillors Hood, Cope, Hickmott, Hoskins and Thornywell, and the request was received on the 16th of September. The grounds are set out in the bullet points in 1.2.1. I won't read through all of the bullet points as I assume you've all read them. Pending further consideration by this committee tonight, the decision at Annex 1 currently stands deferred. The request was made on the 17th of September for the deadline to the response to be extended, and this has been granted. So we now have until the 30th of September, which does change the bullet points slightly because I believe we were going to submit a draft response and then the response covering any views from this evening. So we've now got the extension. So Tonight we can discuss the grounds for the call-in only and not stray off that if possible. And then if there are any changes to the response, you'd need to sort of vote on that as a committee tonight. Wanted to do that. If following the discussion this evening, there's no further recommendation back to the Cabinet member, then the decision at Annex 1 will stand.
Thank you, Jill. At Tuesday night's housing and planning meeting, where this was discussed, there were no substantive changes suggested, but the chairman of that committee, Dave Davis, I'm going to invite him to give a resume of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm speaking both as the chairman of HPSSC and trying to summarise what the meeting felt on Tuesday night, and myself as a member of this committee. Our principal concern, as far as we're concerned, is that there is a principal concern we should all be considering tonight, and that's that our submission is late, albeit it has been extended, as you indicated, but it is a late it will be marked up as a late submission, and as such, there's reputational damage to TMBC as a result. That came out on the night. We do need to get to the substance, to get that substantive thing away. We do need to get that submission away as soon as we possibly can. On Tuesday night at HPSSC, a discussion was very full, with ample time for all members and all non-members to raise all concerns that they have about the response to the 106 questions which make up our submission in the response. The major discussion, however, that night was on the local plan and the way forward and the problems we were facing, rather than the response itself. Probably there were less than 10 points raised of the 106 questions, and there were no other concerns raised. And those any concerns in those 10 points were evaporated when the officers explained the reasoning behind them. There were no concerns by our committee that night or anybody that was present. It is critical that we do get this out of the way as soon as possible. And I think it would be helpful to the committee if we just concentrated on that now, dealing with the response rather than the way the response was arrived at. And to that end, I'm going to make a proposal now, and that is that this committee accepts the response to the 106 questions at Annex 2 of tonight's paper, with no additional yes. Chairman, if I could just explain.
If you were going to make a proposal,
Chairman,
we should have heard what the
we're not removing.
said.
We're not removing any. I'm not removing anything. Anything stopping anybody discussing the thing. We're just splitting it into. We were taking this bit by itself. That's the reasoning behind it. I don't think it's contentious. It's not a contentious thing, is my argument.
Thank you. I'll just note it. And I think, well, there's quite a strict protocol for running a call-in meeting. So yes. I'll just continue with that. Thank you.
Sorry, do you wish me to continue with the proposal, which is simply about the call-in procedure? The response.
No, I think you can come up with that later.
Right, you are.
Thank you. Right, as I said, there's quite a strict protocol in running this meeting, and the members who called the decision in will be called first. So I'm going to do it in the order that they appear here. So, Councillor Hood.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was one of the 5 councillors who called this in because I believe that that every member of the council should have had the opportunity before the document, before the response was sent back to the government. And I have been consistent in that, because since the July the 13th, I think, when the NPPF was first published, I contacted the chair of the Housing and Planning Scrutiny Select Committee and the cabinet member for planning, and asked for a briefing about what was happening with regard to the suspension of the local plan, and if we could have a briefing about the ramifications of that the NPPF were going to have on our plan making process. I was told that wasn't going to be possible. We had our break over the summer. We came back. I asked if we could have the opportunity to discuss this at a briefing. If we as members had been afforded a briefing about this, then we would have been in a better place. Alternatively, we could have actually rescheduled the meeting of the Housing and Planning Scrutiny Select Committee in order to contribute to the response ourselves. What we have instead seen is there's an excellent report, and almost all the responses I do agree with, but there's been no opportunity. There's been no opportunity for members to collectively discuss the NPPF and our combined response. Only the chair of only the leader of the council and the cabinet member for planning have responded to the response from officers, and they have amended it. We haven't had the chance to amend it. So that is why that in summary is why the call in has been made on my part. I can only speak for myself. Thank you very much, Chair.
Councillor Cope.
Thank you. I did want to point out that, thank you, Chair, that I understand that the process has been followed correctly for this and that the Constitution has been adhered to. However, I do think it is important for democracy and for us representing people who live in our wards that we have an opportunity to speak about the wording and the response in the chamber like this. And for me, the getting it out of the way is far less important than getting it right. So that's where I stand on this. Thank you.
Councillor Hickmott.
Yes, the reason I agreed to the call-in was exactly what Mark Hood was saying about we hadn't really had a chance to go through it. Now, to be fair, on Tuesday evening, we did go through it, which was very good. I made some points about the affordable housing, which I understand the officers have taken on board, because it seemed as though we weren't going to put the correct number in, but that was taken on board. So my question is, from the points from the other evening to these questions, have these answers been amended, or are they the same as what they were before?
Thank you. Councillor Hoskin.
It's all been said, really. It's the process that I think we're objecting to. If there was no suitable meeting planned for which officers could give members a briefing and a look at the responses, then we could have, I'm sure it's not beyond the realms of possibility to have a special meeting fitted in. We have loads of meetings cancelled, and I'm sure the process for having an extra meeting put in for such an important issue is not beyond the realms of possibility. And I'd like to just be assured that in the future, members won't be excluded in this way. Thank you.
Councillor Thornewell.
I mean, broadly, I agree with what Councillor Hood has said. I think it would have been more satisfactory to have had an earlier meeting of the meeting that we had on Monday, which was excellent, and the report was excellent. Thank you. Which was an excellent meeting, and the report was excellent. But I do think that all members should have had an opportunity of discussing what I regard as a very important document, because it's going to lay down the future of planning in England and in this borough, probably for years ahead. And I thought the meeting went well on Monday and Tuesday, and I thought that the officers had made a note of what was said, and that would be taken into account with discussions with the cabinet member. That's what I came away thinking would happen.
Thank you. Okay, in accordance with the protocol, we'll invite the cabinet member, Councillor Mike Taylor, as the cabinet member for planning to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. It's the first time I've ever had a decision called in. Most of you know my beliefs about mass housing. I think this NPPF, if it goes through and it achieves the numbers, will be a disaster for our borough. But this isn't about the NPPF. This is about this borough council's response to the NPF. I would not have signed it off if I had not been happy that it represented our views, even if you hadn't put those views in. Every county, borough, parish, ward, special interest group, councillor, member of the public has had the opportunity to respond since the consultation was launched on the 30th of July. Kelly had 1 month to read and digest the draft, formulate a response, and the implications for Tunbridge and Malling, and all the other annexes. And I think she performed a Herculean task getting that done by the 4th of September, which is when she sent it to Matt and I. We needed a couple of days to read the draft response, get our thoughts back to Kelly, and she incorporated them into that draft. They were very minor points that I'm happy to expand on if members want. We were very aware that the last day to submit responses was the 24th of September, the same day as HPSSC. Remember, this is a timetable set by the government, not by us. I had no option but to issue the cabinet member decision to ensure we met that deadline, that our response was lodged, even if the government is unlikely to take a blind bit of notice of our comments. Kelly finalised the draft on the 11th. We agreed it. It was added to the HPSSC agenda on the 13th. I note in passing that during the entire month that the response was being drafted, we did not receive one single comment or suggestion from any member. All right, perhaps we should have thought and emailed everybody when the response was first being drafted to ask if anybody had any comments they wanted to put it in. We didn't. I apologise for that. But I've signed it off. I think it's a good response and I think it should go forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your response. The committee is invited to ask any questions of the decision makers and the relevant officers are online, I think. Have we got any questions? Dave Davis.
Well, firstly, apologies. I'm sorry. I should have communicated a little bit more clearly with you before the meeting about my part of it. What I was suggesting there was we divide the problem into two. One is the response, which is a part of it, the response, and the other is any matters arising as to how it was arrived at, and Mike has been covering that. Would you like me now to make the proposal that I've got, which is simply for the committee to work through the response issues and then return later to how we've arrived at things?
I think I'll reserve you for a moment or two until I've had some speakers. Franny Hoskin.
Thank you. I don't see that that's necessary. It's not the responses that we called in. It's not the responses that we're querying. was all agreed and discussed, as you say, on Tuesday night, and all of us have said that it was a good meeting and a good response. It's the process that was gone through that we called this in for. So we don't need to discuss the responses again because we've already done that. Thank you.
Mark, and then David.
Thank you very much. I have actually got, there's a question, the answer to question 41 relating to viability negotiations. I wondered if it would be possible to add a sentence calling for an independent body to sit as to judge viability disputes, because at the moment you've got a situation where the developer pays a consultant to give them the answer that they want, and in every single time, on every single occasion, it's always the planning authority that loses out. I think it would be massively beneficial if this was actually taken out of the hands of these consultants, and there was a centralised system for that.
Thank you. Can I ask James Bailey to reply to that?
Thank you, Chairman. On the basis, when we get viability issues, we get a viability appraisal submitted. The council uses its own consultants, viability consultants, to assess the viability appraisal that's come forward. So we take the advice of an independent viability consultant, which is paid for by the applicant, because that's part of the discussions we have, but they're purely representing the council. It's just the cost in terms of the viability appraisal that we get. So we do get independent advice from our own consultant, and they look at the viability appraisal that comes forward. So to a degree, that is always being assessed. So we will stand quite hard ground in terms of viability. If our consultant is saying what the applicant's consultant is disagreed, then we will hold our ground. And that's why sometimes you get discussions on affordable housing take quite an extensive period of time. So I think the council is represented by an expert in the field. We wouldn't go down that road without having an expert. So my personal view is that I think the council does have the backing of viability consultants already, and that's been going on for quite some time. But obviously, if members feel that that they wish to add that in, now I personally feel that that's not required in the response going back, but that's an officer view coming forward. Does that answer the question?
Mark.
Probably says more about my perception of how the process works then. Thank you very much, James.
Okay.
David Soniwa.
Thank you. I mean, I think it's a waste of time this evening to go into how we procedurally got here. I mean, I do think it could have been dealt with better, and probably what Mike said would have been an answer to send out an email and invite members to submit their comments. Although it's a Herculean job to go through these documents. And I generally thought the other night what members there were a number of points that members had agreed that I thought the officers would be capable of tweaking the response. That appears, I'm not sure if that's the position or not, so I'm going to test it. I thought at the meeting there was general agreement that solar panels should be mandatory on all new developments, domestic or commercial. I think that relates to, probably you could put that in question 73, that I'd like to move that the officers reflect that view in an appropriate amendment. And I have to say, I don't think it's for me to sit here like a lawyer, as I used to do, drafting amendments. I expect the officers to get the gist of what I'm saying and then devise a wording that's consistent with what's already been drawn up.
James, would you like to come back on that? Or Eleanor, you've got a hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm sorry if there's any confusion on Tuesday night, Councillor Thornywell, but while members were providing comments and asking questions of officers on the responses, there were no direct requests on Tuesday evening to change the text of any of the responses, and that was the collective view at the end of the meeting. We can go through the particular ones that members have picked up there. Of course, if there are changes that members wish to request and discuss that this evening, or indeed with Councillor Taylor, that's absolutely open to them. But that wasn't the position on Tuesday evening, because there wasn't any agreement or consensus on what those changes might be. So I think we might have come away from the meeting with a slightly different understanding.
David,
I would like to formally propose that what I've just said in relation to solar panels.
Have you got a seconder for that, Franny? Can I have an agreement from the floor? Is everyone in agreement?
We ought to just get an officer's view on that, because I thought on Tuesday night that there was a satisfactory explanation for not doing that. Could we have an officer's, James or Kelly's view on it, please?
Thank you, James.
Yeah, thank you. My understanding, because we did say on Tuesday night that this was a sort of a local policy issue, and obviously when we went through sort of the next iteration of the local plan, there was something that we could put into a policy requirement if that's a requirement that we have in terms of all new development having solar panels. So that's more of a specific local plan issue, because obviously we've got national development management policies coming into play that we haven't seen them published at this time. But that was my understanding from last night in the response, that it would be more of a local issue, whereas this is more, this is more of a sort of a national issue that wouldn't go into that prescribed level of detail.
Thank you. Mike Taylor, you've got your hand up, and I know, Dennis, you indicated earlier, but I'll take Mike first.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to concur with what James said. That was my understanding as well, that it will go into a local plan policy. There's a couple of other things that we've picked up during the course of the looking through the responses that will be better dealt with as local plan policies rather than changing the NPPF response. Thank you.
David, what did you want to do on that? Do you still want to?
Yes, I want it to be an English-wide policy.
England-wide policy,
and that's what this document's about, planning in England.
Okay, that's great. And you've got a seconder, Franny. We do a vote. Show of hands for those that agree with it, or perhaps Sally could do for and against.
So members are now voting on the motion proposed by Councillor Thornwell and seconded by Councillor Hoskins to amend the response to that question about the solar panel. And when I call your name, please can you confirm whether you are for, against, or abstain this motion? Councillor Oakley?
For.
Councillor Rose?
Against.
Councillor Afwell?
For.
Councillor Bell?
Against.
Councillor Cole?
For.
Councillor Davies?
Against.
Councillor Harman?
Regrettably, against.
Councillor Hickmott?
For.
Councillor Hood? Councillor Hoskins?
For.
Councillor Hudson?
Against.
Councillor King?
Against.
Councillor Palmer?
For.
Councillor Thornwell? Councillor Mehmet?
Against.
Councillor Williams?
Against.
We have 8 members voted for and 8 members voted against. There will be the casting vote of the chair.
For.
So the motion is carried.
I've got Dennis King to speak.
Thank you, Chair. This isn't what I want to talk about, but it's just a wee bit of confusion. We had a discussion early on about what this meeting was about, and said that it was about process, not about content. So the very next thing we did was talk about content and take a vote on content. So that isn't what I was going to talk about, but I just find it a little bit confusing.
Apologise for giving a misleading statement.
Well, I'm just saying what happened. What I wanted to talk about was, firstly, when I did see a copy of the 106 responses prior to H&P, I did reply to the planning department. It was a generic reply saying what a great amount of work they'd done, what a lot of hard work it represented, and well done. And I didn't criticise in detail anything, because it was a response to something which I may or may not like, but I understood the response. So it's not wholly accurate to say that no one actually got in touch and did respond to what had been produced. On the whole, though, I will say that I do think the process has been regrettable. It's not ideal from scrutiny perspective, but I do understand it was driven by a tight deadline imposed by the government. And I do understand that we started off from a perspective of trying to respond to that. And I do applaud the officers for getting the extension so that we had did the right thing, which was have H&P on Tuesday. And I thought it was a very thorough examination, and it's what we should have been doing. And with the right expertise and with the opportunity to anyone to come along and submit questions. So I thought that was very good. And we did go through it in detail, which is what we shouldn't be doing tonight. So I think the process wasn't ideal, and I regret that. And I think the scrutiny committees are here to do what we should be doing. So thank you.
Thank you. Dave Davis.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we perhaps ought to just see if there are any more questions on the 106 questions, and also if there are changes to it, what that effect is on our submission date of close of play on Monday.
I'm going to ask James to comment on that. As no one's got their hand up for giving any further submissions, will there be a delay caused by the proposal put forward?
My understanding of the process, and Jill will correct me if I'm wrong on this. So, but my understanding is obviously if members put a proposal, that will go back to Mike, and Mike will consider that option on the response and consider whether he wishes to include that in the response. And it shouldn't delay the timing on that, because I know Mike's in the room. And I know members and the whole council are very keen to get the response out. So we secured that deadline. So if there is a decision taken tonight, then obviously for changes to those questions, then obviously that can go to Mike very quickly, and Mike can make a decision whether he wishes to include that. So if I've got any of that wrong, Jill, if you just wish to confirm that on that basis, on the understanding and process, but I don't see that it will delay our response on that 30th deadline that we've got.
No, that's my understanding of it as well, James. I think if you look at next steps in the reports 1.3.1, so if having considered the decision, the committee is still concerned, they can refer it back to the decision-making person or body. So in this case, that's Mike. So we don't have to refer it back to Cabinet and wait for a meeting of Cabinet. It would be referred back to Mike as the Cabinet member for planning. He can reconsider it and amend the decision or not. So it rests with Mike.
Thank you. Right, I've got no further speakers. I think I'm going to refer it back. I think 172 Following further consideration, if the Overview and Scrutiny Committee remain concerned about any aspects of the decision in respect to the response to proposed reforms to the MPPF and other changes to the planning system consultation reference D240094 MEM, back to the Cabinet member for reconsideration, setting out any recommendations in writing. Are we all happy with that? Thank you. Right. I don't expect to reply on the night, so I think we'll Mike.
I don't know whether the protocol actually allows it, but as we're being recorded, I'm quite happy to make that Cabinet member alteration at this moment in time. Thank you.
Thank you for that endorsement. Right. We'll go on to item 6. Any urgent items? There are none. No. I don't have to exclude press and public because there are no other items to talk about. And I'm going to close the meeting at 8:10. Thank you for your attendance.